Hi, and welcome back to Schamberger Labs. This week, I am joined by my very good friend, Jake Black. You may know Jake as a very accomplished writer for a lot of different projects. We became friends through the Topps cards that I did the paintings on. He wrote the backs on, and we connected that way. But Jake has written for a lot of big name stuff. He's done books for WWE, Star Trek, DC Comics, worked on Smallville for all 10 years of that, has done a lot of work for the Ninja Turtles. And Jake, thanks for coming and hanging out with me this week.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So like for me, like wanting to become an artist, I knew around like when I was like 8 years old when I got my first comic book, like this is what I want to do. For being a writer, where did that start for you?
Yeah, so it honestly started a lot with Star Trek.
Awesome.
This may or may not surprise you, um, but I first encountered Star Trek when I was about 8 years old. Just
Okay.
Next Generation was just about to hit the air, and I'd seen an episode of the original series when I was like 5 at Christmas time. I remember seeing like the Savage Curtain with Space Lincoln
Oh yes.
yeah, and I was visiting my grandparents in Calgary for Christmas. We were at my aunt's house, and that was my first contact with Star Trek, as they say.
Hi-oh.
Yeah, and then I saw Star Trek 4 in theaters, but I still wasn't quite aware of it. But then in the summer of '87, my family consistently bought Honey Nut Cheerios, and there was this big like advertising campaign with Honey Nut Cheerios and regular Cheerios too, I guess, promoting this new Star Trek show. And in every box of Honey Nut Cheerios, they had like these little stickers um, featuring the Next Generation cast. There were about half of them, I guess. It was like Riker and Geordi and Wesley Crusher and the Enterprise, maybe
Huh.
a Worf. And
Well, wasn't Worf supposed to just be a recurring
yeah,
character? He
yeah,
wasn't part of the actual cast at the beginning. That's
yeah,
weird.
right. Yeah. And you peeled it off, and or peeled, like it was like a front wax paper over the sticker, and if you peeled that back, you maybe won a prize, like, I don't know, like a mini Enterprise toy or something. But the grand prize was this walk-on roll for Next Generation.
Oh wow.
And I don't know what it was, but this cereal box was like the most fascinating thing to me. And I pulled out a sticker. It was Geordi was my first one, and I had to find out Star Trek,
Right.
find out what this was. And so my parents, probably my dad, because my mom wasn't super like pop culture savvy or TV savvy or anything, helped me find at least the original Star Trek, and then Next Generation would follow that. It was on our UHF channel, our local UHF channel. We didn't have cable yet at this point. And I started watching the original series, and then as Next Generation started, I picked it up on episode 3 or 4, whatever Code of Honor, the super racist one.
Oh.
was the first episode of Next Generation that I saw. And yeah, but I was hooked.
Yeah.
And like we didn't have a strong enough signal to like record them on VHS tapes, so we would like attach a audio cassette recorder with like aux cables to the TV, and I would record the audio of these Next Generation episodes and listen to them over and over again. And because of that, I'm 8 or 9 years old, and I started writing like what we now call fan fiction. It didn't really have a name like that, at least that I was aware of at 9 years old.
Right.
In those days, but I just started writing fan fiction in pencil for Star Trek: The Next Generation. And I don't know if it was my teachers at school or my parents or who, but people started to say that I kind of had a facility for writing.
Cool.
And they just encouraged that. And so, I wrote one time, I remember I wrote like, I was in a kid's version of A Midsummer Night's Dream, and I wrote a fan fiction sequel to A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Huh.
And stuff like that. So as years start to pass, I'm 12 years old, or about to turn 12, I guess. And I wrote what to me was like my magnum opus at that point, was this 40-page Next Generation story that was all dialogue, because I was basing it on what I thought comics or TV would be. I didn't know anything about art direction or stage directions or anything like that in a script. So it was all dialogue, and I sent it to a guy named Bob Greenberger, who was the editor of a bunch of stuff at DC Comics, including the Star Trek comics that they were publishing at the time. And I sent it to him just asking for feedback, but I think I included the line, if you want to use this for the comics, you'd be fine. But mostly I just wanted to get, this Star Trek editor's feedback. And he wrote me back this letter that I have still to this day, full of advice specific to the story, but more general writing advice.
Mm-hmm.
And the key phrase that he took from that was, if you want to write every day.
Absolutely.
And yeah, from July of 1991 to the present, I've taken that to heart. And so whether it was writing fiction or writing in a journal or sending emails or whatever, that's where I, kind of grew as a writer. Like you're saying, you were reading comics. I was reading comics too. I started reading Archie comics, and that led to the Star Trek comics with DC, which then led to, like the whole DC pantheon of the early 90s.
Good stuff.
Yeah. And when I was in my later college years, I was like 21, 22, I was trying to figure out where I want my life to go. And I was kind of unfocused in college, and I'd gone through this really bad breakup with this girl I thought I was going to marry. And I was just like,
her loss.
what? Yeah, well, that kind of, dodged a bullet too.
I had a couple around that age, same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and
they dodged the bullet, honestly.
Yeah, it was we exchanged gunfire there, I think. Yeah. My take. But I was pretty depressed at that point, in the fallout of that breakup, because it was pretty serious, and we were both theater majors, and I was kind of drifting through.
So it was dramatic.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was.
Hi-oh.
Well, you're not wrong. But, I heard an ad on the radio. Remember the radio? Remember?
I do.
When that mattered.
I still listen to tapes on my tape deck.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I wish I still had those Next Generation tapes. I'd send them to you.
That'd be so cool.
And this ad came on for the premiere of Smallville. And I'd always been a Superman fan. Super Friends was like my favorite show when I was little. I remember Super Friends and Masters of the Universe being like my first favorite shows.
Same.
Dukes of Hazzard also, but I
was a Knight Rider guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Magnum,
yeah.
Airwolf, all that stuff.
Oh, Airwolf all day.
And Lois and Clark during high school was a big show for me. Yeah. I was really, really into Lois and Clark. And I heard this new Superman show was premiering that night. I needed to figure out an escape because I, was kind of drifting through college. I was in this depressive episode. And I just thought, I'm going to go work on Smallville. And so I went home.
Just said, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Just going to manifest this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. and I was trying to figure out how to do this. This was the same afternoon. It was the day that Smallville premiered, which was October 16th, 2001.
Uh-huh.
So we're about a month removed from September 11th, which is, that's kind of a side note as it relates to Smallville. I think Smallville ended up being successful primarily because it premiered a month after September 11th, when we were still all
Staying
super
at home.
patriotic and
Yeah. I mean, that's why I watched it.
Yeah.
My first comic book came out that month and was a total disaster for the same reason.
Oh, no.
Because no one was buying anything that month.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I sat down at my computer and I was like, okay, I know shows have production offices. I'd been a professional stage manager for a couple of years in this, and so I was a little bit familiar with the entertainment industry, and so I started digging online, and this is 2001, where the internet was not super what it is now.
Mm-hmm.
But I found the producers' names, Brian Robbins and Mike Tolan.
Uh-huh.
And they were not the showrunners. Those were Al Goff and Miles Miller.
Right.
And I couldn't find anything on Al and Miles. But after spending about an hour with my, 21-year-old late Gen Xer Google skills.
We were good back then.
I found one website that said Tolan Robbins Productions, and it had a phone number next to it. The rest of the site was in Spanish.
Huh.
I don't speak Spanish, but it said Tolan Robbins Productions, and it had a phone number. So I called that phone number
Uh-huh.
on my landline. Might have been my cell phone. I barely had gotten a cell phone, and they answered, Tolan Robbins Productions, and I said, "Hi, are you looking for interns?"
Awesome.
And the receptionist was like, "Yeah, let me transfer you to the office manager." So I get transferred to this office manager, and he was like, "How did you find us?" And so I explained, and he said, "Well, yeah, we're absolutely looking for interns. We have a big group of them coming from Emerson University, or Emerson College, I guess it's what it's called, in Boston. But we can look at you for one or two other slots that we have." And so I sent them a resume. I interviewed. I went out to LA and interviewed. I was living in just outside of Salt Lake City at the time.
Okay.
Went out to LA and interviewed. They offered me an internship to start in January. And so I moved out to LA and I did this internship. And Tolan Robbins Productions was doing a lot of shows at the time.
Uh-huh.
Smallville was one of a good sized portfolio. They basically did everything that was live action on Nickelodeon.
Oh, cool.
So it was like the Amanda Bynes show and all that, and Keenan and Kel, a bunch of stuff like that, and Smallville.
Mm-hmm.
And they were developing a show called Birds of Prey.
Okay, I remember that.
Yeah.
The pilot.
Yeah, the pilot, and it did go to series. I think they aired and something like 15 episodes.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay.
But it only lasted a season.
Yeah.
Anyway, as I started, they asked if there were any of these projects that I particularly wanted to work on, and so I said Smallville, and so they sent me over to Smallville once or twice a week. And I just started making inroads there. But on my first day on Smallville, Al and Miles invited the assistants, the writers' assistants, and their producer assistants and everything into their office, and me. And they said, "We've got 5 slots left on this season to fill, and like episode script wise. So we want to open it up to you all to, pitch episodes."
Sure.
So, not knowing that this isn't how Hollywood works, on your first day on a specific TV show, you're invited to pitch to the executive producers. I went home and I wrote like a dozen pitches, and I took them back the next day, and they never went anywhere. But it really showed this initiative. And so
Right.
they asked me, do you want to be a writer? And I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. I hadn't really signed up for this internship with the intent to become a writer, but it's just kind of I blurted out because I'd had this fan fiction background and I loved reading comics, and I'd had teachers encourage me in that field, that I kind of blurted it out. I'd been on the production side in live theater for so long that I just never really thought about it, but I just blurted it out. And so they had me sitting in like with the writer's room off and on, and they had me start writing kind of the viral marketing, what we would call viral marketing now, for the shows. Like the town newspaper had a website, and so
I remember. Yeah,
we would like follow up on episodes and then tease future episodes.
Fun.
And I worked on that for 4 years, and then out of that I wrote my first comic, which was a Smallville comic, and
with Helen Slater, right? Or did that come later?
That was later.
Okay.
Yeah. It was just this little backup feature.
Cool.
Yeah. And do
you remember who drew
that? Yeah, Pete Woods.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, which again, like my first published comic was by DC, and my first artist was Pete Woods.
Wow.
Not knowing that this is not how the comic
not how this works, folks.
Yeah.
Now, your love of Star Trek stayed constant throughout this?
Yeah. I loved Star Trek, and
Enterprise was still on around then, right? Like for a few more years, couple more years.
Yeah, and what was a huge bummer at that point was Enterprise was like the first of that era of Star Trek shows that didn't have the open script submission policy that Michael Piller had created during Next Generation, but then ran through Deep Space Nine and Voyager as well.
Yeah.
Where anyone could submit story pitches or whatever.
It's wild how many professional writers came out of Star Trek, right? Like that went on to like not just do stuff within sci-fi, like, you know, Ron Moore is the biggest one probably within sci-fi, but like showrunners for like Mad Men came out of the Star Trek system. It's wild.
Yeah. And
directors too. Like there's a ton of TV and movie directors came out of Star Trek.
Yeah, and like I say, it's such a bummer that because I had tried, I've been like, well, I'm a TV writer now,
right?
I hadn't produced anything on TV yet, but
TV adjacent writer.
TV adjacent writer. So I looked into, does Star Trek still have that open script submission policy? And they just didn't.
I think maybe they knew the writing was on the wall even there. Like,
yeah, I think so too. And you know, you look at like the team at Enterprise was pretty amazing too. Like you had David A. Goodman and a bunch of people who went on to stuff like Family Guy and drama and
man, that last season is so wildly good, isn't it? Like I just rewatched the Mirror Universe episodes last week. It's crazy. Like I like the first season quite a bit. Was it the third season with the Zindi stuff? I didn't love as much. It felt, I don't know, a little off to me. Like it was a little too like Archer all of a sudden becoming like this warmonger I didn't care for. But like, man, like when they did the about face with the like time travel with the alien Nazis and all that, like and yeah, like wasn't it like mobsters versus Nazis and aliens? It's so good. And then like I love that they figured out like the budget issue that they had. Like they could do these much more elaborate sets if they went with these like 2-3 episode arcs. So like the Vulcan stuff or the Andorian stuff, like they had these amazing sets because they were reusing it for several episodes and like amortizing the cost on it.
Yeah, and you know that was the area where they brought in the Brent Spiner Dr. Soong.
Love it, which just continued on with the latest season of Picard.
Right, exactly. It ties into that. It all comes full circle, and you know, our friend Big Show was in
Right.
that arc.
Wasn't no wait, it was it Voyager that was it that Rock was in?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Voyager was The Rock,
Was that
and
his first non-WWE thing, or was it 70s show? I can't remember which one was.
you know, I don't know, and I think it was a synergistic choice because SmackDown
Right.
was on UPN, and I want to say that Scorpion King might have, or
Okay.
the Mummy might have
Uh-huh.
happened before that Star Trek, but it was very, very early in his career, and it, you know,
Yeah.
it's not what you would say is his like finest acting role necessarily, but
Yeah, well, it wasn't the one where everyone said like, here's the new top guy. But like to remember right, Batista was in an episode of Smallville.
yeah, and Kane,
Oh, and Kane. Cool.
yeah, and then yeah, there was one other, Ashley Massaro was in
Okay.
Smallville as well.
Oh wow.
Yeah, she was in the same one as Kane. They
Okay.
were in this like Phantom Zone fight club. Yeah. And
That's
then
fun.
Batista also was like a Phantom Zone monster, but he'd gotten loose. And
Yeah,
that same episode was the premiere of Martian Manhunter in Smallville, with the
that's right.
debut of Martian Manhunter, who was played by Phil Morris, who has been in a ton of Star Trek himself.
Oh, right. Cool.
It's 6 degrees of Star Trek, man.
Because
And
like honestly, like the production of that first, well, Next Generation through Enterprise, like it
yeah,
was all one production,
yeah,
right?
right,
Like so like
right.
and they were putting stuff out, especially at one point, like was it was it ever three shows at once or just two? But they
Just
were
two.
still doing the movies as well.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
so I mean like they were employing a lot of Hollywood for a lot of time there.
Yeah, yeah. And the other like WWE tied to Star Trek. Well, obviously William Shatner is in the WWE Hall of Fame, but
Right.
um, Tiny Lister, it played the Zeus. You know, Zeus.
Uh-huh.
Tiny Lister plays the first Klingon in the first episode of Enterprise in Broken Bow.
Oh wow, that's him.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
So there's those four: it's Big Show, The Rock, Tiny Lister, and William Shatner, who are your WWE Star Trek
Yeah, the biggest
crossovers
crossover
there.
there.
Yeah,
So you you said you got into next gen and then like went back to the originals. Like
yeah,
my mom was like a massive Trekkie. It's hilarious. So like a closet Trekkie. Like it
yeah,
was
sure.
just like last Thanksgiving when my parents were over, that my stepfather found out like how much my mom was into it. Like so I grew up on the original series, and
Yeah,
then like I feel like the fourth movie was the first one I saw in the theater.
right.
She thinks she took me to like starting with Wrath of Khan, but I don't know. I probably would have
Yeah,
been too young to remember.
right.
But I definitely remember Voyage Home. And then like next gen, like she and her friend would call each other after every episode. Um, not so much to talk about the episodes, but just talk about how hot they were for Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, he was the sexiest man alive for People
Right?
magazine in like '93.
Can you
Yeah.
imagine that they were thinking about putting a toupee on him?
Yeah,
That's crazy.
he did all right. He did okay for
Yeah,
himself.
yeah. It went good for him. And then I'm liking the new stuff. I'm really loving Strange New Worlds.
Isn't it good?
It's wildly good. Like they're getting so many of the little points right too. Like having Pike being consulted by different opposing points of view, but he's still the one that makes the decision. Like
Yeah,
with Kirk and Spock and McCoy, like that
right,
trinity, like you really see it in Wrath of Khan, right? Like
right,
the like Kirk has to be the decider, but he's getting the different points of view,
right.
and they're doing that so good. And then like this new added wrinkle that he knows the fate coming to him.
Yeah.
So it's like a pre PTSD.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah. So I am a Star Trek apologist, I think.
Uh-huh.
And you know, like when Discovery premiered and it wasn't necessarily the most well received thing, or even the JJ movies,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of longtime fans don't
I
love
like the
those.
first and third one.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
I've got
And I
issues with
and
the
I
second one.
I appreciate the second one. I know what they were trying to do.
It just didn't
And
make sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Like, I don't know. I'm real big on the fact that Khan should not be played by a white guy. That a Sikh Indian should maybe not be a white guy. I don't know. Maybe I'm old
especially
fashioned
in
on that.
2013. Yeah, 1966, you could maybe get away with it
Right. I mean,
you know, a Latin
like I'm sure from their
gentleman,
point of
but
view, they were still like, well, we got a non-white guy at least.
yeah,
Right. With Ricardo Montalban. But like, yeah, that, and then like they never said who Khan was.
yeah,
Right. It's just like, here's Khan and he's doing stuff.
yeah,
And it's like, okay, like who is he? Why do we care? I don't know. Star Trek Beyond ruled though.
yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
That's one of my my high points of fandom. Is one of my friends from Smallville was working as an executive at IMAX, and my wife and I had been through a lot of really kind of rough stuff in the months leading up to the premiere of that movie. And my friend at IMAX just invited us to the premiere of that film. It was during San Diego Comic-Con, and it was out behind the convention center, out overlooking the bay there.
Uh-huh.
And they'd set up this big outdoor screen, and the whole cast was there, and there's the whole red carpet thing, and Conan O'Brien hosted the night. And it was the coolest thing I've ever done in my life, was go to the Star Trek Beyond premiere. And then the movie was good. So
Right.
But what I like about Strange New Worlds is how it is building off of Discovery. And
Yes.
I really liked the Pike stuff during Discovery.
So good.
And as I watch Strange New Worlds now, you know, I was saying this to my wife and my son the other day. They, you know, we watch it together, the three of us, every week. I just want to hang out with these guys, the
Right,
characters
right.
on Strange New Worlds. I don't necessarily want to go on adventures or anything. I just want to like hang out with them because they're so cool, like every one of them.
You want to be like one of the lower decks guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So do you have a favorite character on Strange New Worlds so far?
The Pike himself, I mean, like Anson Mount is just killing it. I think he's fantastic. Their way that they're fleshing out Nurse Chapel, I'm really fascinated by. And the young, inexperienced version of Uhura, I'm liking that. But also the new characters they're bringing in, like I'm already building some relationships with them, you know, as a fan. So yeah, loving that.
I really like number one.
Yeah.
I want to know more about number one. I want to see number one engage with, you know,
Getting more personality out of the character, right? Like they were presenting her as like this like cold person in the original pilot, and now like this whole other fleshed out version with Rebecca Romaine playing it.
Yeah. And that scene from this last episode, or you know, I guess there'll be another episode out by the time this runs, I don't know. Anyway, the one where Uhura goes on the comet, where number one and Pike kind of sit down, or they're cleaning up after the dinner. Just their conversation there was amazing, and it was like 2 minutes.
Really deft writing.
Yeah, and their relationship, like it says a lot about those two characters' relationship, and I just want more of that. Like I said, I just want to hang out with them.
Absolutely. Well, the time flew by on us, Jake. So thank you for hanging out. You've written a lot of books that people, I assume, can get on like places like Amazon.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The easiest way to find them is go to jakeblack.com.
Okay, great.
And you can find me at JakeBoySlim on all of the socials. That's a whole other story that we can get into the next time we chat. But it's JakeBoySlim on social. JakeBlack.com has links to find all my stuff.
Awesome. Yes, we have way more to cover. Half an hour was not enough. And of course, with my own stuff, Schambergerlabs.com to get the artwork, robschamberger.substack.com. That's my newsletter, but also there's a paid version where you can watch these episodes a week early. And like and subscribe here on YouTube. I guess you're supposed to say that on YouTube. And
smash that like button.
Smash it. And Jake, such a pleasure. We're definitely going to be doing a part 2, and love to you and your family. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Rob.